Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I got a really good question yesterday from a viewer who wanted to know if you have fished an area with no success, how do you know whether you should switch baits and continue to fish that area or pack your stuff up and get out of there to try to find new fish in another area? Now, this question is one of the toughest questions in fishing. We all struggle with it every time out. But I can assure you that the top fishermen out there are the ones that can evaluate an area quickly. They can make adjustments if needed, or they know when to leave the area. It makes them very efficient and effective fishermen on the water. But having said that, there are a pile of different variables that come into that. A lot of it is past experience, a lot of it is the current conditions. And that's what the angler really has to look at to make this decision. But having said that, I've got five key factors that come into play. Now, every time I'm on the water, if I fished an area with no success, these five factors are what I'm going to be looking at to determine whether I want to commit more time to that area or whether I want to leave to try to find new fish. This is a very good question. It's a somewhat of an in depth answer, but I think you're going to get something valuable out of this. Now, before I give you these five factors, I do want to remind you that if you want to grill me with questions like this, you can check out my virtual lessons that I do through fishthemoment.com. They're 1 hour sessions where you can ask me whatever questions you want, and we can break down lakes, we can talk about techniques. It's a great way to have direct contact with me. The link is in the video description. Also, if you just want some basic help on your local lakes or a lake you're going to on vacation, check out the lake breakdowns that I've done. I've got hundreds of them up. Most of them are North Country bodies of water, but I also specialize in smallmouth lakes throughout the country as well. So check those out. I'll also put the link in my video description. All right, so the five factors that you need to take into account of whether or not you should continue to fish a spot that's already been unproductive for you. The first factor is you have to look at your bait choice that you used. If you went through an area throwing a finesse presentation, so maybe it was a wacky rig, maybe it was a shaky head, maybe it was a drop shot, and you had zero success, to me that says you should not continue to spend time in that area. You shouldn't make an adjustment of baits to a power fishing bait and continue to fish it, because the likelihood is if you didn't catch them on a finesse presentation, you're probably not going to catch them on a power presentation. Now, I will say the reverse though. If I worked through an area throwing a power presentation, so maybe I was throwing a chatterbait or maybe I was slinging a spinner bait and I didn't get any bites, I still think there's value in potentially working through that area with one of those finesse presentations that I mentioned, because a lot of times if the fish are not in a very active mode, they're not going to hit one of those faster moving presentations. So there are some of these other variables that come into play as well. But if you're looking at strictly just bait choice, then if you threw a power presentation, you could think about throwing a finesse presentation in that same area. But if you threw a finesse presentation to start and didn't get bit, don't switch to a power presentation. Just get out of that area. So that's the first thing that I like to look at. The next is going to be the type of area, right? So if I'm fishing what I would consider a travel location, a travel route, or a migratory area for the fish, those are going to be areas that generally can have fish continue coming to you, and therefore it could be worth staying longer in that area. So, some key migratory locations could be a point that has deep water access, it could be a channel swing bank, it could be a big break line that's got a big flat attached to that break line. Those are areas where you have a lot of fish that are using those areas and that will be moving along those travel routes. Those are the types of locations that do tend to produce at certain periods of the day. So you may be fishing it for an hour and a half without a bite, and then all of a sudden you run into a school of fish, or the fish become active, and therefore you can get right in a hurry. You can catch a lot of good fish. But if you're fishing an area that's more of what I would consider a home base area or an isolated target, if you're fishing docks, or you're fishing, lay down trees, maybe you're just fishing down a bank or just a shallow point that really doesn't have any sort of deep water access to it, these are locations that the fish just tend to hang out, like a rock vein or a little bit of a rock patch or an isolated boulder. Those are areas that, generally speaking, yes, there's going to be fish that use it, but there's not going to be a lot of fish in those areas to begin with. So if you went down a bank with some docks and some laydowns and you fished through them and you didn't have any strikes, I don't think you want to go back down that same bank with a different bait. It just doesn't make much sense to me. I think you're better getting out of that area and going versus, like I said, if you're fishing a deep point, a break line, if you're fishing like a bridge or a causeway type area, those are funnel locations where you have a lot of fish that continue to swim through them, and therefore it becomes an area that could replenish itself pretty quickly. The next up is going to have to be with just whether or not you saw life in that area. So if you're fishing an area and you're seeing no bait fish, you're not seeing any fish breaking the surface or chasing shad, you didn't get any bites, you probably just want to leave that area. There's no reason to continue to spend more time if you're not seeing any action of any form. Generally speaking, as a rule of thumb, when you're talking about fishing an area, the best areas have a lot of life in them. Doesn't necessarily mean it's all just bait fish. It could be uh, bluegill, pike, walleye, just a lot of fish in these areas because the areas that have a lot of life generally just have better cover, better habitat, better forage, and therefore those are areas worth spending more time in. If you're not seeing any life, get out of that area. It's just not going to be a productive thing for you. Another thing that you got to take into account every time you're fishing an area that was unproductive is your current weather conditions. Are you fishing during an optimal period or are you fishing during a period where you know fishing is tough? Meaning, if you've got post front conditions, bluebird skies, and you're talking about the spring period, so you've got a little bit of a cold front, you're probably talking about very tough fishing to begin with. So if you know you're in a decent area, it could be worth spending more time. But if you're fishing through that same area and you think you've got peak weather conditions, so maybe it's sun up or sun down, maybe you're talking about you've got good stable weather, maybe you've got a nice breeze blowing into a point and you didn't generate any strikes, you're probably better off leaving that area and going to another spot sooner than later because you do have optimal conditions. So you're better off going and finding fish that are active versus fishing an area that either has lethargic inactive fish or has no fish in that area. So that's the fourth thing. The fifth thing just has to do with whether or not the area you're fishing is a proven area, meaning if you've got a spot that is consistently productive for you, you probably want to spend a little bit more time there than just leaving the area faster. There's a couple of reasons why. One is you just have more confidence there. So if you have more confidence there, you're going to fish better. At the same time though, you have the experience that tells you this spot is a productive spot. You don't have that with every other spot. So if you left what you is historically a good proven spot to go randomly look for other locations, you don't necessarily know that your time is going to be spent in productive spots. You can pull up a map and say these areas look good, but you don't have that prior history to necessarily say this is actually a very good spot. Now, if you do have a bunch of spots on a lake that you have a lot of good history on, a lot of good proven spots, then it's worth bouncing those proven spots. But don't just pick up and leave a very good spot to go think you're going to randomly find another very good spot because there's not a pile of them out there on the water. But those are the five things I look at. Every time I fish a tournament and I go fish where I think I should be catching fish, but I'm not, I have to make the decision. Do I want to commit more of my tournament day to this area that I think is good, or should I get the heck out of there and go find new fish? And those are the five factors that I look at. It really is something that can be difficult and it determines a good day versus a bad day, but you have to be willing to leave a spot. And if you have 5 good factors that are pointing to you to leave, you probably should leave. But if you've got good evidence to suggest you might want to stay and commit more time, it might be worth committing more time. But don't just randomly get out there. You want to take into account each of those factors to make your decision. So hopefully this answers the viewer's question. It's a very good question that we all deal with every time out on the water. And these are the things that I look at. If you guys are watching and you have other suggestions or other factors that you take into account, please put that in the comment section as well so that the viewer can see your answers too. Hopefully this was helpful. If it was, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow for you.